I'm a mess. I'm a mess. There it is. It's all the way over here.
It's fine.
Okay, sound off. Phone muted.
Hello, friends and fiends. Welcome to Bugs Need Heroes, a podcast where an artist and an entomologist team up to illustrate the inspiring abilities of insects by creating bug-themed superheroes. I'm Kelly.
And I'm Amanda.
Producer Derek and Desdemona are also here. Before we get started, not creating a hero today, but discussing a hero. What's bugging you, Amanda? Look at us being flip-flopped.
I know. I love when we flip-flop. I guess I'm the Kelly in every way this week because I can't think of anything that's like actively bugging me. I will say though, on my drive,
for you.
I love it for me too. I didn't sleep great, I guess, but like that's like par for the course. That's so normal for me. I don't even bring it up. I will say here in the Pacific Northwest, the squirrel should be a Halloween animal because they are nuts this time of year.
Really?
They are absolutely insane. I'm sure producer Derek can speak to this, but like they're so desperate to like collect their little caches that they're going to hide over the winter that they're just everywhere. I must have seen 16 squirrels in the 4 miles I had to drive this morning. I was like, my gosh, they're everywhere. And if you put your pumpkin out too early, they eat your pumpkin.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember that from living in the suburbs as a kid. The squirrels would get our pumpkins.
Well, you know, I can't really blame them for that. It's like actively a food that we're placing on the front step. So, what's bugging you?
This doesn't happen too often, but it happens more often than it should. I got catcalled yesterday while walking down the street. Yeah.
Unless they were actively meowing at you. And they're also cats. I will not allow this.
I don't know who that works with. Like I don't understand.
That's my thing with catcalling is it's so clearly not about I'm just paying you a compliment. And it's like, no, you're not. You're not. Because if it was about anything but making me uncomfortable.
It's very disorienting. And the listeners, I'm sure some of them have seen what I look like. I'm a normal lady.
You're a pretty lady. I'm
not like a model or a beautiful woman. I'm like walking down the street from Whole Foods.
Right.
You know?
I'm just a woman living my life.
Yeah, I'm just and for a man to just like yell at me from his car, it's uncomfortable and I don't care for it and I don't know why it still happens. Also, I'm 42. Please stop.
Please, sir. I have established in life. Do not even try to come over here. No, don't do that.
It's weird. I came home and told my husband, and he was like, what kind of car was he driving? He said, was it at least a convertible?
Yeah, at least be like, look at how nice my car is. So I could be like, well,
it's all bad. Like it's all bad. And I'm annoyed. The only time I want to get catcalled is by an actual cat, please.
Yes, correct.
Cats only.
Finn
is currently catcalling me from
across the house. Yeah. In college, me and my friends went through a phase where we would like positively catcall other women. So
that's nice.
Like we'd be standing on the balcony hanging out, because we're all hanging out in like our dorm rooms in our apartments, and we would like see a woman on the street, and we'd be like, "You look nice today. I like your outfit." Like, "You're doing well. I can see you're working hard at life." And, it was like, and we like all inevitably end up in these conversations like, but are we part of the problem? Because now we're also intruding on her day. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like you could intrude on her day and compliment her.
I make an effort to give one person a compliment every day. So if a weird blonde woman has ever come up to you on the streets of New York and tell you that she likes your shoes, it may have been me.
I'm headed out.
I think it's nice to compliment people, but screaming at them from a car about their body parts is not the way to do that.
Ain't the way.
Yeah.
At least, and I've heard this before, when giving compliments, you should always compliment something that someone has made a choice about.
Yeah. That's why last time it was shoes, because I'm like, they picked those shoes.
Yeah.
I do it for men too. I also compliment men because I feel like men don't get enough compliments. It's
Yes.
just not part of their deal. So
Get your man some flowers. There was this
yeah,
big
my
thing not
husband
that long
loves
ago
flowers.
that was about like how men don't receive flowers, and how like a huge portion of men would like appreciate getting flowers because it feels like a very like, here's something that's just for you gift, you know.
Yeah.
They also make bouquets out of jerky these days, so that's the kind of bouquet I like. Is bouquets made out of little pieces of jerky cut into flower shapes.
Ooh, I do love jerky.
Yes. Speaking of flowers today, and women who would not tolerate being catcalled from a carriage, we are going to talk about the incomparable Maria Sibylla Merian today. Do you know
It is.
anything about her at all?
I know she's a lady entomologist, and I I remember reading about her a little bit in like college, like undergrad. But no, I don't. I generally don't know very much about her. I'm excited for folks. It's an Amanda
It's an
episode.
Amanda episode. Get ready to hear my voice a lot.
I'm pumped. I can just sit back and learn. I love learning.
This is a very Amanda episode because it's like both art history and bugs at the same time, which is like my whole personality some days. So, you know.
I think the audience loves a good Amanda episode. I know a friend of the pod, Pet, is a big fan of Amanda. Our
Oh, really? Well,
episodes. Yes.
that makes me glad because at least we're
Yeah.
doing something. You know, Ted at least will be excited to learn about Maria Sibylla Merian.
So who is
So,
this lovely lady?
so she is starting to get some more recognition now. I would say that she got a lot of recognition in her time, and then there was a lull in her recognition, and now she's back. She's returned. People are like, "Hey, we stopped talking about Marianne. We should have kept her going." So she's credited as not just being the first like scientist who did what she did, but like generally the first ecologist overall because of the nature of her work. So this story, this biography is set. It starts in 1647, which is in the golden age of the Dutch golden age in the Netherlands, and I'd say a little bit just kind of Northern Europe in general. So they're a little bit behind the Renaissance that happened in like Italy, which is when you think of quote unquote the Renaissance. But for perspective, Isaac Newton is born in 1642 and doesn't do his whole gravity thing until 1687. So,
Wow.
and
Okay.
we're like right there. Marianne is born 5 years after Newton, and she dies like 5 years before him. So her whole life is in the same time period as Isaac Newton. If that helps you
It does.
imagine what kind of world we're in.
In a
How,
world.
in a world. I was low key annoyed. I got this book from the library because I was trying to get like kid friendly ones so that because I want my kids to know about it. But like these illustrations, this is the trouble with being me and why my husband says I can never enjoy things. Is like there's these illustrations in this book which are very lovely, but like slightly anachronistic. They're like slightly too early. It's called Summer Birds, the Butterflies of Maria Merian. And like the illustrator is different than the author. So I'm sure that she was just given a brief, but like they're slightly too illuminated manuscript. Okay, that's all. That's all. That's all I want to. That's all I want to say.
I love illuminated manuscripts, though.
I love it. Like, no shade on the illuminated manuscript, but just that it's slightly outside the time period of what we're talking about.
So who are the author and illustrator for that?
For this one, it is Margarita Engel. Pictures by Julie Pashkis. Maybe Pashkis. You might know better than I because that sounds like it might be.
See it. It
might
sounds
be Polish.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see.
Oh, Pashkis.
Okay, Pashkis.
Yeah, Pashkis.
No. I got a ton of books from the library. Unfortunately, they are all probably arriving tomorrow. I also got.
Are they all little kid books?
No, I got a couple adult ones because they have like the portfolios, which we'll talk about by the time we're done here. And then The Girl Who Drew Butterflies. How Maria Merian's art changed science. This one's more middle school. It's a little bit more like eyewitness dense.
Oh yeah, maybe
Um,
we'll put links to these books in the show
yes,
notes for the
because
kids.
they were both very good.
And I'll add them to our Goodreads. We have a Goodreads, everybody. I don't know if you know that. I made it a while ago. It's full of bug book recommendations. We have one for adults and one for children. So I'll add these to the Goodreads.
So this one's
We'll
very easy to read. If you
put a link in
enjoy
the
what
show
I talk
notes.
about today, this goes a little bit more in depth of like the culture and the world. But the chapters are all named after, they're all called Chapter 1, Egg, Chapter 2, Hatchling, Chapter 3, First Instar,
Oh, I love
Second
it.
Instar, Molting, Pupa, Eclosing, Expanding. So I thought that was very cute that
That's
every
very,
chapter
very
was
cute.
a little bug.
We gotta write a kids book, Amanda.
I know, right? Just because I really want to illustrate one. So
I'll write it if you illustrate it. Yeah.
oh, yes, I want that so bad. So, like I said, we start in 1647 in Frankfurt, Germany. Here comes our beautiful Maria is born. I'm going to call her Marianne because she's a scientist, and you always call scientists by their last names. Her first name was Marie. So, she's the daughter of a printmaker, Matthias Merian, who is the head of a large and successful printmaking company which specialized in like maps and topography and like book illustrations. So this is 1647. So the printing press is out. The printing press be present. She was her father's ninth child, but her mother's
Ooh.
first.
Oh boy.
So she's
Dad's
the
been busy.
dad had an empire to build here. Okay. So he was successful for a printmaker, but I don't want to give the impression that he was like some sort of elite. They did very well, but they were very firmly middle class, and that kind of informs the rest of the story that she is not of the social elite. She's just middle class. Because like printmaking is still like a blue collar job essentially.
Right.
Um,
Right.
but he was very well known. People knew if you were looking for quality art prints, you went to Marianne, right? And it was a well known business. And she actually ends up leaning on her dad's name for most of her life because they were an established like brand at this point, right?
Yeah.
So even after she gets married, she goes by Marianne professionally, which I think is like deeply interesting that she kept her
maiden name.
Kind of,
Right.
essentially
Yeah.
her whole life. Apparently her dad recognized her talent as young as like 2 or 3 years old. But unfortunately he died shortly after that. So he died when she was
Aw.
still very, very young. Fortunately for Marianne, her mom had a type and she married another artist like 2 years later. Like not long later,
Nice.
she was like, I need another artist. And like Jacob Merrill was her stepdad, and he was a still life painter, and he also recognized that she just had the gift. She just had it. So he was still life, so he immediately starts teaching her how to like paint flowers and in situ bowls of fruit, I assume. Because that's
The
always
classic bowl of fruit.
the whole classic bowl of fruit.
Did you, when you were in art
Oh,
school,
yeah, when I was
did
in
you
art
do the
school,
bowl of fruit?
bowl of fruit. Other art school kids will recognize the paper bag was a big one. It's a big one, the paper bag. Because if you crunch a paper bag just like a little bit, it becomes really visually
Interesting.
interesting and strange. And very, very difficult to replicate that that texture without it being like, why'd you draw a bunch of lines? You know, like, so paper bag, other art kids will know. So it's important to note also that she was taught watercolor by her dad because watercolor and gouache are considered an acceptable medium for lady artists.
Oh boy.
And this is like true for hundreds of years. For hundreds of years, women are allowed to watercolor, but they're not allowed to oil paint.
Oh, that's so weird.
It's one of those
We
weird
weren't
little
allowed to do a paint style. What?
It's funny. It's because of like the guild system, which I won't get into today, but like
Oh,
basically
right.
there's these guilds that kind of create the rules of society, basically. And so this is just a systematic oppression of women thing where they say, oh, women are allowed to use oils. It would be bad for them. They're too delicate to use oils. Also, by the way, oils is the only way to become a prestigious artist. So it's like, okay, so I see what you've actually done here.
Yeah.
Which is to keep women at like, you're really good for a woman. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Let's limit the women and pretend it's for their own safety.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But so she learned these watercolors, and it was a popular collectible. So she was able to sell them even very young because of her connections with her dad and stepdad.
Mm.
And this style of watercolor flower on a piece of vellum was very sellable, very popular. I would argue that they're still very popular because I can't walk into a Barnes and Noble without seeing like a botanical illustration on like a poster. So, I think this cemented in her very early on that she could always sell her own work, and that she didn't have to rely on anybody else. She could do it herself. And I think, and when you
independent woman,
when you combine that with the keeping her maiden name thing, with the I could always sell my own work thing, I think you start to get a picture of like who Marianne was, right?
Yeah. I feel like I'd hang out with her.
Yeah. Oh, you're about to hang out with her because at 13 she started raising bugs in jars.
We're best friends.
You're best friends. I was like, I think in my notes here I have Kelly-like behavior. In her later books, she wrote, "I spent my time investigating insects." You have to imagine this is in Dutch, I imagine. "I spent my time investigating insects. At the beginning, I started with silkworms in my hometown of Frankfurt. I realized the other caterpillars produced beautiful butterflies or moths, and that silkworms did the same. This led me to collect all the caterpillars I could find in order to see how they changed."
She sounds great.
She's, I mean, Kelly-like behavior for sure.
I wanna have a drink with her. She sounds fantastic.
So at 13, she's already started observing the moths, noticing that like one moth turns into a different kind of butterfly, and like this is not around. So we'll get to the how bugs are appreciated in their own time in a second. So in 1665, so she's about 18 now, she marries an apprentice from her stepfather's shop. His name's Johann Graf. He's also an artist, but he specializes in the interiors of churches.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And like universities and stuff. But I think that's important because it paints this picture of people are starting to collect art for their homes as a way to see faraway places or places that they won't go to. So I can collect a print of the Eiffel Tower because I've never been to Paris, especially if it's got like Audrey Hepburn on it because I'm a basic beezy. you know how it goes. But like that idea of like I want a poster from this place that I haven't been to, or possibly I have been to and I want to remember it.
Yeah.
So people are starting to do that sort of thing. And that's kind of where Maria Merian and her husband, like their business lives, is in that sort of commercial printing. So she has her first daughter, and that's when they move to the Netherlands. They move back to her husband's hometown of Nuremberg. The Dutch Golden Age is still doing great.
In full swing.
It's in full swing. The Dutch Empire is empiring. But it's on its like lower end now. It's in the last like 20 years. So art, science, commerce, all those things are really happening in the Netherlands right now. So that's kind of the world we're entering into is they're now young artists in Nuremberg who produce popular prints for like other middle class people, right?
Yeah.
So she starts to become a tutor to wealthy families and mostly acceptable women's medium of flowers and embroidery patterns. But all the while she's sneaking bugs. She's sneaking bugs into her paintings.
She's sneaking them into the painting.
Sneaking them in. She's saying, "Well, we can't have a flower without a bee. I'll just put this bee in here. You know, what's an iris without a beetle on it? Okay." So, while she's teaching these girls how to draw flowers, she wants to draw them from life. So these wealthy families have wealthy gardens full of wealthy bugs. Derek wants to say from life in situ, I think is the word you use sometimes.
Yeah,
the idea that you're seeing a creature or a plant where it would naturally arise. That's the in situ sort of thing. From life just means you're drawing it in front of you. I have it here. You can draw from life if a flower's in a vase, if the vase is in front of you. But as we'll see with Marianne, she preferred to draw them like still living. That's how she wanted
like
to
planted in the ground.
Yeah, that's how she preferred them. Just because she felt strongly that you got the best results from from a live specimen.
Well,
And
was she out in the garden then with like an
Yes.
easel painting in
So
real
she's
time?
taking these either one at a time because she came to their house, or whole tutor groups. There's a special word for it. These young groups of unmarried women that's called like virgin clubs. Which is a little weird. I mean, keeping in mind that like the word virgin is more connotationally like young unmarried girl.
Yeah, for that time period.
Like I get like such Artemis vibes for that, but like I'm in part of the hunt.
Yeah.
You'll never catch me. So these wealthy girls they have gardens, so she's coming to their gardens, whether in groups or by themselves. To these imagine those like Versailles hid like mazes of bushes and
like huge rose gardens.
Yeah, exactly. Huge rose gardens. Like
maybe
that's
tulip gardens if this is Dutch.
Yeah, exactly. They're all wearing clogs and their hair's in braids. So like she's getting access to these beautiful gardens that she would not have access to any other way. Just because like who has a garden other than like the elite, you know?
Yeah.
And so from these gardens, she starts taking specimens home with her so that she can observe them at home. And this
stealing bugs.
But this must have been a known quirk of hers because people would give her caterpillars that they found. Just like
that's fun.
In charge, like, hey, I found this bug. Do you want it? And she was like, yes. Yes, I do. So in 1975, she's able to publish for the first time, and she publishes a book of floral patterns. And this is when she officially takes on her official name of Merian as her like nom de plume. This is my artist's name is Merian, specifically to link her to her dad. So I imagine in her private life she was going by Groff, which is her like married name, but professionally she is Merian. And I just find that really interesting that she's young, married, has 2 young daughters at this point in the 17th century, and she's choosing to go by her maiden name.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a move.
That's a power move right there.
But I think it does also speak a little bit to the culture of the time. That people imagine, especially like women's rights, as like being this slog for a long time. But the reality is it like up and down a lot of time, depending on like where you were, what you were doing. I mean, kind of like that Athens versus Sparta debate. Like, where was it better? You know?
Yeah.
And the Dutch at the time were a little bit looser about like what women were allowed to do, as far as like the English have always kind of given women a hard time, but the Dutch at the time were willing to like yeah, you can have a job.
A little more loosey-goosey.
Yeah.
For the Dutch.
So she's starting to get recognition because of this book of floral patterns, and she's rising to the top of her limited field of like other women artists, but there were other women artists working and making money as artists, as long as they stayed in watercolor, because, you know, and as long as they drew things like
no oil paints for you, ladies.
No. And like, as long as they stuck to like florals and like a cat sleeping in the garden, you know, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
So as long as she sticks to those things, it was reasonable and societally upstanding career for her. But the longer she does it, the more her true passion of bugs becomes evident. She just can't stay away from the bugs. She loves bugs. I will say here, she also loves frogs. So I think there's something about yeah. So there's like also a lot of frog work happening at this time. So something about like it starts as a thing and then becomes another thing is like that's what's really got a hold of her attention, I think.
That's cool though. Yeah. But she obviously has an eye for nature and a passion for nature in general. Yeah.
A passion for bringing bugs home in jars.
Stealing bugs from the elite.
People were giving her bugs, so like clearly they were fine with her taking the bugs. So at this time, insects have a reputation for being evil. Like of the devil beasts, and like you should get rid of all bugs. A little bit like your how do I get rid of all mosquitoes question. Like that's kind of how people have felt about bugs at the time.
But all bugs.
But all bugs. Because at the time, there was this thing called spontaneous generation, which is the idea that bugs weren't born. They just arrived. They just appeared out of the mud, or specifically out of rotten matter. Like
Yep.
they just
Yeah.
arrive because they didn't. Metamorphosis isn't like a known thing really yet, right? The thought of an egg becomes a caterpillar, becomes a pupa, becomes a butterfly or moth or whatever. That's not known because the caterpillar and the butterfly are two separate bugs. Oh, Derek says, you never see worms pop out of the ground when it rains. They are just there. So it's a little bit like that. You're like, where are all these worms coming from?
Well, there was a classic experiment, though, where someone did cover rotting flesh with a like glass jar, and when no flies came out, then they got to thinking, wait a minute.
Yes. And that's
maybe we were incorrect.
That's happening right as she's making these observations as well. Like 2 years previous, that's when that comes out, and then she publishes the same thing and says they're not. This is where they're really coming from. But we know that she read the study that said that the bugs aren't just coming from nowhere, because she cites it in her work, like just a few years later. So she was not just collecting bugs; she was reading like whatever was being published out there. So the only bug that kind of has an okay reputation is like the butterfly, because it's not the hold on. So they're born from mud by spontaneous generation. The butterfly is not a caterpillar. Rather, the butterfly emerges from the caterpillar because the caterpillar has died.
Oh, okay.
Does that make sense? Like it's not a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. It's a caterpillar dies, and the act of death springs out a butterfly.
The butterfly? That's
yes.
Oh, that jar, that like jar experiment, that was Francesco Redi. I just wanted, yeah.
I have it in my notes here somewhere too. So the butterfly has associations with like Christ and resurrection. So you'll see positive things about butterflies, which I think is why she kind of starts with butterflies. Because like, look guys,
and they're beautiful. Yeah.
Bugs are friends. We don't even do that. So it's really a handful of scholars begin publishing empirical information about the insect, the moth, the butterfly, how they're all connected. And the quote is, "We don't consider the chicken and the egg two separate beings, though they look very different. The same is true of the caterpillar." And Merian is one of the early naturalists to observe insects directly and cites the published studies of metamorphosis in her own notes. So she's not just like idly drawing them because she likes them. She is studying them. She is properly studying and like noting.
Scientific method, baby.
Exactly. So 1679, she gets up the gumption. She says, I'm going to publish a book about caterpillars.
Great.
Public reputation be darned. And she publishes on the wonderful transformation of caterpillars and their particular nourishment. It has a couple different translations, but basically, look how great these caterpillars are and look at what they eat. And she depicts these insects with their plant hosts. And that is what sets Merian's work apart from the very beginning, is the idea that you cannot separate the caterpillar from where you found it, because it needs that. And it straight up won't eat other things unless it has to.
Like, that must be the beginning of understanding like host specification.
Yes, exactly.
What we would call an obligated to that particular plant in ecology. Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the sorry, I lost my train there for a second. So the idea that like no, you're fine. So like nowadays it's very obvious that like a monarch caterpillar always eats this milkweed, right? That like wasn't something that anyone had like documented yet. So Merian's the first one to like write down, hey, you can't, this caterpillar doesn't just show up anywhere. And there was some ideas that like wasps always showed up in these locations because wasps generate from the death of these kinds of animals. Like a wasp would generate from a decomposing horse. A cicada would come from the spittle of a cuckoo. So there was
As one
like,
does.
as one does. I too have emerged from the spittle of a cuckoo. So like there's like an attempt. I think the human mind wants to rationalize things.
Yeah.
So they're rationalizing, oh, I always see wasps here because of this. But like there's no further investigation. Like that's how it is. That's the facts. Wasps are come from horses. Yeah, Derek says frogs were also believed to have spontaneously generated because, like, again, you don't find a little frog
From mud. Yeah.
Yeah, you only see big frogs. Where are they coming from? So Merian's also one of the first people to make note that a male of a species and a female of a species will look different sometimes.
Oh,
She's
sexual dimorphism.
That they're not two separate creatures. It's one creature with a male and a female form. And that you might have different coloring on one side of the wing than the other side of the wing. She's one of the first people to like be like, look, you have to include both sides.
Yeah.
Because they're different. And other researchers
That's
just like, kind of not bothered to do that. Like a lot of this is just her being like, hey, show the whole animal. And other people be like, what? No, I won't.
And that's probably her artist's attention to detail.
Yes, right? I would argue that it is very much her trained artist eye saying, you have to show the whole thing. She's also one of the first to document the proboscis and like how it works. It's not like as a big straw.
The little like curl up.
Yeah, the little, which is so cute. Yeah. Butterflies, they're good. I'm sorry, they're good. So she pioneers this style, right? Where she shows a single plate, a single image, and she shows all stages of the bug on one plate so that you're associating all of these stages with a single animal.
That's great. That's so detail oriented. Yeah.
And they're beautiful, these illustrations. Let me see if I can quickly grab one for you I sent some to myself. I don't want to show you one of those because they're from later. Here we go. You will get to those, don't you worry. Okay, if you go over to the live recording chat, you'll see an example.
Oh, wow.
So these are
beautiful.
So you can see she's got looks like some sort of hawk moth hornworm going on here.
Hawk moth happening.
His hornworm form on the stalk of the plant, his little pupa form nestled here in the leaves, and then finally the hawk moth form using its long, beautiful.
Look at that proboscis.
His little built-in straw to get the plants.
Yeah, that's beautiful. We'll have to include some of these illustrations in the social media when this episode goes out. But yeah, that's really beautiful.
Yeah. So she pioneers this style. Before they're all kind of presented, here's the moth, here's the hornworm, here's the plant. And she pioneers this style of like, let's do the whole thing all in one. Mm-hmm. And a beautiful composition too. Like it's just like a beautiful image as well. But she kind of takes these scientific illustrations and makes them beautiful and more inclusive. So her caterpillar book, people loved it. People wanted more of it. And it was successful enough that she was able to produce a part 2. So she has published 2 books about bugs so far. 3rd book overall. She did include her married name on the second one, which kind of, I think, speaks to a little bit of a friction happening with her husband there. Because she put it as like Nay Marianne instead of just straight up Marianne. And I think it's not long after that her and the husband separate. They don't divorce yet, but they do separate because her stepdad dies and she goes back to live with her mom. And then there's a little weird sojourn here where Marianne kind of joins a cult.
Oh, what? That was not.
I know you're out of left field. It's not quite a cult. It's like a religious commune, but like, doesn't every religious commune kind of give culty vibes? Like, I'm sorry,
a little bit.
Yeah. So this is her half brother. I assume through her stepfather. He lives at Waltha Castle with this religious community. And it's one of those extreme religious community, like you're not allowed to own anything.
Oh, yeah.
Everything.
That's a cult.
Yeah, it's a little not good.
Cult.
And it's run by these like two sisters and their brother, but their brother's not present. He's away. But like the two sisters run the whole thing. But they felt her work was important enough that they allowed her to continue to do her work, even while being part of this community.
Oh, okay.
So this is when she does most of her frog work, is when she's living at Volthic Castle. But I'm not here for frogs. I'm here for bugs.
But we also love frogs.
We love frogs. I mean, no harsh on any frog except for the Suriname frog, which we'll talk about later. He can go away from me very quickly. So the religious group was led by two sisters, but their brother was abroad in South America. He was the governor of a town in a place called Suriname, which we will come back to very shortly. Suriname is in the north of South America. Weensy little place. But it's important to note this because this establishes her first connection with South America, is that the brother is sending back specimens to the lobotists, the sisters back in Valtha Castle. And so she's starting to see things from the new world. These bugs, plants. Apparently the brother sent a stuffed 6-foot snake at one point. She was
Here you go, guys.
Here you go. Here's a stuffed 6-foot snake. And she's like into it. She's like, yes, I want to see more of the new world. This is awesome. At some point in this, the husband keeps like coming back and he's like, let me be part of the community, guys. Let me be part. And the community keeps rejecting him. They're like, no, you're not the vibe. And eventually they do get officially divorced because he's not the vibe. I know nothing about that guy other than that they were married, had 2 kids, and then the religious commune was like, no.
No, thank you.
So a few years later, they are only there for a few years, but her mother unfortunately passes, and then not long after that, the commune ends up dispersing because it sounds like there was illness in the commune, like everyone got sick with some disease, and they're like, we better separate. So they all separate. And that's when Marianne goes to Amsterdam with her now grown daughters. They're now grown up and also working artists. So now we have a trio of working lady artists, and they're about to take Amsterdam by storm. Ah, pew, 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 start the sitcom music. Pew, 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 pew. So Amsterdam is still bustling, right? Dutch Golden Age is still bustling in Amsterdam. And this allows Marianne the next step in her work, which is to start looking at people's cabinets of curiosity. Do you remember a cabinet of curiosity?
Yeah. I feel like I have one.
Yeah, probably, frankly. We use the word cabinet, and I feel like it's misleading because that makes it sound like it's like a single armoire full of interesting things. But these are like sometimes whole buildings are their cabinet. So Wunderkamer, or Wunderkammer, I should say. That's a more like wonder room, wonder collection.
Yeah.
You know.
I'm in the wonder room right now. That's where
I
record.
Cabinet, yeah, again, cabinet is more fun. Cabinet of Curiosities just sounds so concise and cute, but these are whole collections. These are
Guillermo del Toro has a
Yes.
show on Netflix called Cabinet of Curiosities, and it is spooky and very good.
Oh, Guillermo. I love Guillermo so much. Guillermo. He's so cool. I long for the universe in which he got to make both The Hobbit, because I think his version of Hobbit would have been so good. But also he was on slate to make a Haunted Mansion based off the Haunted Mansion ride in Disneyland.
Ooh.
And then at the last minute, they were like, no, your version's too spooky. Like, this is supposed to be for children, Guillermo. And I was like, oh, no, that's the version I want, though. I want his version.
Also supposed to do in the Mounts of Madness.
Yes.
Which would have been... we desperately need...
I want to live in the universe where no one held back Guillermo. Just let him go. Just let him do whatever he wants. Like, yes, go. Because it's not like he like has a bunch of flops, and so people don't trust him. So I don't understand.
He's doing Frankenstein right now.
Yes, yes.
We'll see how that goes.
The set costumes look wild out of context. So we'll see. Guillermo, I'm trusting you. If it was anyone else, Guillermo. So
well, but yeah, so check out his Cabinet of Curiosities on Netflix if you're looking for some spooky season fun.
Yeah.
Sorry, Amanda. I derailed you. I'm the Amanda now.
You're the Amanda now. The comma is you. So this episode is in November.
Oh, well, whatever. Spooky season's forever, guys.
You can keep it rolling. Spooky season is 3 months now. September to Christmas.
Yes.
Christmas has had it too good for too long. Okay. They just
Jack Skellington certainly thinks so.
Yes, I'm in Jack Skellington season where everything, both Halloween and Christmas, is allowed. Is it a Halloween movie? Yes. Is it a Christmas movie? Yes. I'm here for both. I'll take no criticisms at this time. So, an art collection to really get your cabinet going, you needed 3 things. Firstly, sculptures and paintings. Secondly, curious items from home and abroad. And thirdly, antlers, horns, claws, feathers, and other things belonging to strange and curious animals.
Check, and check. Come visit my room, friends.
So this included things from both the New World and the Old. And one of the most popular items you found in like any cabinet of import, unicorn horns.
Oh, fun. Narwhal?
Yeah, there it is. So like, and there's like this weird, like, it feels like almost like Houdini versus Arthur Conan Doyle-esque like rivalry within the community of like, no, it's a unicorn hunt. It's magical. Unicorns are real. And then the scientists being like, no, they're not. That's just from a narwhal. Stop it. Stop this. You know, like,
I don't have a narwhal horn and I want one.
Oh my gosh.
Listeners, if you're ever
I don't know if they're legal to have.
They're not legal.
I was about to say, I was like, I don't know that they are. I think it's one of those things where like indigenous cultures are allowed to collect them for like cultural reasons, but no one else is allowed to.
Them. No. There's probably some like floating around.
Oh, I'm sure.
Were obtained like a really long like time ago, and they're probably all right. You just can't get more. It's probably a finite amount around.
Right. This is the vegan method, right? Where like I'm allowed to own a leather jacket if the leather jacket is from before a certain time period. And I feel like that's what we're doing with the narwhal horns as well. It's like, if you can prove that this narwhal horn's from 1905, you're allowed to keep it.
Then you're fine.
The Marine Mammal Act came into being about 1978. So
the Marine Mammal Protection Act here in the United States. So
you have to prove it's from before that, which we could get into a whole thing about like whales. Like I saw a TikTok this morning. There was a bunch of people jumping into the water to look at humpback whales as they swam by. And I was like, you are way too close to those humpback whales. Yeah. Not only for like legality reasons, but like all this
reasons too.
All this humpback would have to do is accidentally bump past you. And you're just like, I'm shattered because this multi-ton animal just like gently nudged me, and now I'm shattered from the inside, right? It's like how sperm whales can like shatter you with a noise.
And and they're not aggressive, but accidents happen, so you just don't want to.
You know how many people get killed by cows every year? That's just like a regular animal. now I put me in a foreign environment. I don't belong in the water. The whale does, but I don't.
We're not fast enough to get out of the way.
We're not fast enough to get out of the way. Yeah. He's just going to crash into me. I don't know how good his vision is or how good his sonar is. Does he know where I am?
Yeah. He kind of does, but he also doesn't.
But also he's a whale.
He's not fast either. Yeah. Anyway, don't do that, guys.
Don't do that. Don't jump in the water.
Don't do that, listeners. Yeah.
Whales. I got into a whole orca, I often fall down the orca ADHD hole.
There's a cat scratching at my door.
Is that what that is?
Can you hear that? Yeah, that's a cat. It's probably baby Finn, but
oh man,
who knows?
He's got to use both those paws. Such a good use. I like to imagine him bouncing on the one leg very precariously while he scratches with both front paws.
He like mostly sits on his butt and the nub. He like sits on it and then does a little scratchies. He's all right. So anyway, unicorn.
Unicorns.
Cabinets of curiosities.
I point out the unicorn horn because I want to make it clear that like a lot of these private collections are being privately collected by wealthy people who are not scientists.
Yeah.
And then scientists who are perhaps unscrupulously using science to prove their own theories rather than building their theories around the observed science. And then like also you have a certain amount of like con artists and stuff, you know. So like these cabins of curiosities are full of many beautiful scientific things, but they're also somewhat filled with nonsense. Right? And like so Marian's touring these cabins of curiosity. She's making friends with the sorts of people who own them and making connections with like societally
befriending fellow weirdos.
Yeah, exactly. They're making weirdo clubs all across town in Amsterdam. So I assume the things are getting fun in Amsterdam. That's all I'll say about that.
Yeah, love it.
And then so these collections are curations made by specific people, possibly confirming their own biases. And Marianne thinks they're awesome. She thinks they're great, but she's writing in her diary, how do I know what's real? I want to see the real thing. And then I think it's also important to note that like a lot of the information you're getting is from other scientists' drawings, and they're just describing animals. So I'm going to take a brief segue here to show you some of these, what I call style telephone, which is when you describe an animal to someone who's never seen that animal. And then they have to,
and they have to draw it.
And then they have to draw it. And I tried to pick examples where you more or less know what they're going for. So let's start with one that I think is pretty good. Well, I'll send them over to you. Tell me who this is.
Oh, okay, we got a rhino.
But like his plates aren't quite right.
They're very armory.
Very
like
armory.
A shirt. It looks like a shirt.
Yes, it looks like very corally to me into my eye. He's like got scaled dragon legs. Like he looks like he's more hewn out of some sort of rock.
Yeah. Almost like turtle scoots.
Yeah, very scooty. So while I know that this is a rhino, because of my modern ability to look at photos of a rhino, if I've never seen a rhino, this is what I think a rhino looks like, right?
Right. And to clarify, this is supposed to be an Indian rhino, not a white or black rhino.
Correct. Again, I want to emphasize that these are coming from places where I haven't gone and I'm unlikely to ever go, right? As a person who lives in Amsterdam in 1675, right? And then here's another one. Again, you should be able to tell who he is.
Oh, okay. Elephant.
An elephant, but like his trunk looks more like a vacuum hose.
Yeah. It's oddly ridged.
It's oddly ridged. It looks like he's like
very
folded from origami in some parts of him. His eye is way too far forward. His tusks are like in a weird position. He's got like
and tiny feet. And like going. Yeah, his feet are very strange. What are those feet?
Like again, this is either someone who isn't trained in art trying to draw an animal, or it's someone drawing an animal from a description of an animal.
That's funny.
So these are the sorts of images that Maria is looking at and going, I'm not sure that's right. So now we got two more, and then I'll let you off the hook here.
Yeah, I think we can probably put these up on socials. Derek is making it that way. So we'll figure that out. Oh boy. Is that a seal?
It's
a walrus? Is that a
walrus? It's a walrus. I love his like leafy.
What is going on there? What is that leaf elbow? That's happening.
He has a fin, but also legs. And like he has legs in the back, which walruses.
Look at how beefy those legs are.
He's like an otter walrus fish.
That's very strange. Look at the little pig nose too.
So again, she's looking at these going, I'm not sure about this.
And it's weird tail. This one is the worst.
And then I like this one because like I know what it is, but in no universe does this look like what it's supposed to.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a giraffe, but it's just a very tall gazelle. Like with like a greyhound body. It's very strange. So this is what seeing these. That's the last thing I wanted to say. So not only you don't want to draw them from a description of an animal, right? Because you'll end up with a walrus with 4 legs and 3 fins. Yeah, exactly. So you think, okay, then I'll just taxidermy the animal, right? And I can safely say to you that the taxidermy is not any better because, okay, here we go. Step one. I'm sending it to the live recording chat. Okay.
Can I take a deep breath before this one?
Not bad. I'm starting you with the kindest angle first.
Okay.
And now I'm going to hit you with the bad angle. Here's his face.
Oh no.
So
this is terrible.
This is a famous this is a famous example of bad taxidermy. Belonged to the King of Sweden, his beloved lion. He sent it to the taxidermist and said, "Please taxidermy my beloved lion."
The tongue. What is going on? This was a nightmare. This is like if a child drew a lion and someone made it into like real life.
It reminds me strongly of those like services where they're like, "Here's my drawing," and then they turn it into a real stuffed animal for you.
Look at those weird eyes. They're so close together.
It's so strange. It's so strange. But imagine this is your only experience seeing a lion.
A lion. Oh,
this is it.
I feel so bad.
This is what you think lions look like because it's a taxidermy. It's the real lion. This is surely what they look like. I love him.
Look at those paws.
So funny.
He really does look like a child drew a lion and made a toy out of it.
And you know, King Frederick of Sweden was like, "What did you do to my lion?"
I wonder if he was mad. Was he mad about this?
He had to have been mad. I can't imagine she wasn't mad.
Look at those human-shaped teeth. Look at how square they all are. There's not
a fang
to be seen.
Scooby-Doo teeth. It's
there's one tooth directly in the middle under his snout. Like, teeth come in pairs. What is that?
It's so funny. But like, imagine this is what you're seeing from quote unquote the New World or from colonies of the Dutch. They're sending back specimens. Like, you can't trust the drawings because the drawings are questionable. And you can't trust the taxidermy because the taxidermy is questionable. And like the taxidermy being questionable lasts forever. I mean, I'm sure you've heard the story of like the platypus where they're like, "This isn't real. You're trying to trick us."
Oh, yeah.
So
horrifying. Absolutely horrifying.
So you can't trust the drawings and you can't trust the taxidermy. What's a girl like Merian to do, right? What's she want to do? What would you want to do?
I would like to take it into my own hands.
You like to take it into your own hands?
That's what I would do.
So observing these collections was better than nothing. Okay, but it left the scientific minds like Merian's a little bit skeptical of what these animals really look like. So
you don't say.
Yeah, because obvious. And then, like, of course, you put a bug in a box and then you send it across the ocean on a boat. How realistic is it by the time it gets to you?
It's going to be crinkled up and
it's the wings are going to be busted. The colors aren't going to be good.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, you could tell more or less what the bug looked like or anything else, the 6-foot snakes and the lions. But there was no clues to how they lived, what plants they were found on, what caterpillars belonged to what adults. That was a big one. Like, it's just a caterpillar and a box of butterflies. Who belongs to who, you know? So, and then, of course, the true colors of a dead animal versus a live animal.
Especially with insects, the colors will really fade.
Quickly, yes. Yeah. So she's quoted as saying, "In these collections, I found innumerable other insects, but I found their origin and their reproduction is unknown. It begs the question as to how they transform, starting from caterpillars and chrysalises and so on. All this has, at the same time, led me to undertake a long dreamed of journey to Suriname."
Ooh, good for her.
Yes. You remember Suriname as the place where her old religious leader was acting as governor. So how's she going to get there? It's so far away. Up until now, she's always funded her next project with her previous project, which I'm sure you're familiar with that.
She's a true scientist.
A true scientist. She's going grant to grant here, baby. She lived comfortably on her artist income, but she was by no means wealthy. She had friends who were wealthy, but like, she's just some woman. She's a working artist. She's a teacher. She's a well-liked member of the community. But as a woman, she was not recognized as a scholar worthy of backing by patrons either privately or by a university. Unlike other Dutch naturalists, Merian is not employed by a commercial enterprise or corporation, which is also important to note that other scientists are being employed by a company and they want the scientists' findings to support what they think should be happening, you know, so that's also its own whole thing. So I don't need to tell you, Kelly, that your work is kind of dead in the water unless you have someone who's willing to pay for you to do it. Otherwise, you're like you're a hobbyist at that point, right? You're not a professional. So what could she do? How could she get across the world to look at bugs? And by this time, she's now in her early 50s. It'd be better for her to just stay home and look at the collections of her friends and not go to South America. Do you think she did that, Kelly?
But our intrepid hero would never.
She would never. Instead, she put a sign in her shop window that said, "Liquidation sale, everything must go, inquire within." And she sold everything in her little shop. So, I mean, she has like an established, shop here in Amsterdam, and she sells everything inside of it, including like the paints and the easels, everything. So she could finance this trip. She places ads in the newspaper saying, "I'm trying to go to Suriname. Come buy my stuff." In the end, she pays her own way, having sold some 255 paintings among her other things. So she puts up a sign on February 12th, and on July 10th, she's on the boat, headed for Suriname. So she got there fast. She was ready.
That's really brave, too, of a woman to do that, like, alone, right?
She took her younger daughter, Dorothy, with her. Dorothea, depending on what pronunciation you want to go with. I like Dorothea. Her younger daughter, Dorothea, went with her, and their goal was to spend 5 years in Suriname looking at bugs and other stuff. But
the dream. Living the dream.
So have you ever heard of Suriname before? It's very small, so you will not heard.
No, I know the name. I'm aware Suriname exists. I know absolutely nothing about it. Where is it located?
It's okay, so it's slightly north of the equator, so it's going to be hot. 90% of the territory, even to this day, is covered in rainforests. It has one of the highest proportions of forest cover in the world. Good job, Suriname.
Suriname is beautiful.
Bordered by the Atlantic Ocean to the north, French Guiana to the east, Guyana to the west, and Brazil to the south. So it's right there at the very tippy top of South America.
Okay.
It's the smallest country in South America, both by population and by territory. So it's Quincy. It's the Rhode Island of South America. There you go.
Oh, okay. Derek has put up a map for me to see. Yeah. Well, it is just north of the equator.
Just north.
Wow.
It's deep in that Amazon-y sort of.
It is tiny. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how it compares to a state. Probably not very big. So at the time, Suriname is a Dutch colony. We're in the Dutch Empire. That's how the Dutch are getting around the world, right? They're in Japan. They're in South America. They're everywhere. So the main city was called Paramaribo, and that is where they land. They set up a house. We don't know exactly where the house was, but we do know that it had a garden because Merian immediately started putting bugs in it.
Of course she did.
What else is she going to do? Okay. She quickly reconnects with the contacts she had made both through the previous governor and now her own social connections of other, cabinets of curiosity people.
Okay.
The Dutch mostly stayed in this established city and didn't really go anywhere else. So it's wet, it's green, it's mountainous in some parts, it's valleys in other parts. It was a big change for the North European climate of the Dutch coming over. So, but every contemporary writing says like, wow, this place is beautiful. Wow, this place is amazing. This place is the most beautiful place on earth. So what do you think they were doing to the forest, Kelly? This most beautiful place on earth?
Oh, well, if it's stunning, we must cut it down.
We must cut it down. They were chopping it down, and Merian hated that. So she very quickly started criticizing the people who were just chopping down the forest willy-nilly.
I'm assuming the people who are chopping the forest down were not the indigenous people.
No. These are the Dutch. The Dutch.
Okay.
Down. The people there have no desire to investigate anything like this. Indeed, they mocked me for seeking anything other than sugar in the country.
Oh, what a waste.
I know, right?
What a waste.
So
And how dare she speak up as a woman, too, I'm sure.
Some broad.
I'm sure that went over real well.
Yeah. So as a result of the Dutch being like, no, we're here for sugar, she ends up hiring local guides to take her out into the jungle to find specimens for her research. And she just slowly starts circling out further and further. At first she stays out for a day, then she's out for 2 days. Pretty soon she's spending, a week in the jungle.
I still can't get over how, especially in this time period, how brave this lady is.
It's wild, right? Really, to think about it.
This is dangerous.
I don't know that you could convince me as a modern person to
like do that.
Go spend 5 years in the jungle. Like, are you kidding me? I know. No.
There's disease to think about. There's aggressive animals, large snakes, monkeys. It's just not. It's not like taking a walk in a forest,
and of course,
in the Pacific Northwest or here in New Jersey. It's so much more dangerous. Yeah,
so much more. I mean, there's
even with guides, I imagine it's incredibly dangerous.
Jaguars in those forests. Yeah. I am not going. So her documentation becomes even more focused than before, because now she's not just an artist who draws bugs. Now she's a researcher, right? She's out there discovering animals, documenting animals for the very
a full-on scientist.
Yes. These are animals that have not been, quote unquote, discovered before, but she's using her magnifying glass. I imagine she's just like looking at everything through her magnifying glass as she walks. I don't know why
that's what we do. We just walk around with a magnifying glass.
That's how my 2-year-old investigates our garden. So
you have to get him a jeweler's loop.
Yes.
For like the very tiny things. Yeah.
My dad has several because, I just realized Marianne's dad was a printer. My dad's a printer.
Forever connected.
Am I Marianne?
And you're an artist.
Oh my gosh.
And here you are talking about bugs.
That's why I love her so much. It's because I am Marianne. She don't take no flack from no man. I'm here. So with my 2 kids. Oh my gosh. She had 2 daughters, and I had one of each, but it's fine.
And you kept Cody.
I kept Cody also, and I didn't get drawn into a religious commune.
I mean, sort of.
I escaped. It's fine. Yeah. They're chronicling insects, Dorothea and Marianne, so closely that in Marianne's notes, she says the scales of the blue morpho butterfly are like roof tiles, and that the red cracker butterfly must be studied under magnification to appreciate its true beauty. So she's in. She loves these bugs.
And I have a blue morpho that my husband got me. We had been dating for 6 months, and he was at a street fair in New York City, and I came up to visit him, and he surprised me with these beautiful framed butterflies, and one of them was a blue morpho. Hangs on the wall in our living room. Yeah.
I see blue morphos a lot. They must be one of the bugs.
They're very common, I think.
Yeah, they're both very beautiful, and they survive breeding well, I think.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure, but I'm judging that based purely on how often I see it. So she's noting like which caterpillars will run away from you, which caterpillars will like do that little snake thing they do sometimes. With, like,
oh yeah, we love the little snake thing.
So I just wanted to interesting tidbit here. She was so intuitive with her research, she was able to disprove the idea that some caterpillars have eyes that go down their bodies, which was a common belief, because the guy who like was the big sponsor of not just magnifying glasses, but microscopes.
Okay.
Yeah. He was like, oh, I used my microscope to show that caterpillars have eyes down their bodies. And she was like, no.
He got fooled by a caterpillar. That's the caterpillar's job, is to fool you. And
the eye spots worked on you, sir, with your microscope.
A human being.
And she was able to disprove that by showing that the caterpillar can't see leaves to its side, which seems like so obvious now. But like,
we do a lot of what feels like obvious experiments in science, to the point where I see people like online going, how is this a study? This
right,
is
we spent money on this.
Yeah, but really,
where my money's going.
If it's not tested, then we can't say for sure, even if it seems so obvious. And there's because what if it's not?
Right. There's like whole premises that if you want to build your later study on it, you first have to like rigorously document the first thing. Like I can't start doing intense calculus until I prove that 2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
Yes,
that's
it's
exactly
obvious,
how it
but I
is.
have to start at 2 + 2 = 4 and write it down and publish it so I can cite it later, so.
I can't start talking about caterpillar vision before I disprove that all those little spots are not actual eyes.
Exactly. Exactly. But the thing that truly, truly sets Marianne apart, in my opinion, from her male peers, is that she deeply respected
It's her boobs.
It's her boobs, of course. Is that she had to collect these bugs despite being weighed down by her womanly form. Is that what it is that she asked the locals about bugs. She went to Suriname and then asked the indigenous Americans and the slaves who worked in Suriname, hey, what's up with the bugs and the other animals, toucans and stuff.
This also feels very obvious. Someone should have done that.
Doesn't it feel very obvious?
Let's ask the people who live here. Come on.
What do you know? What do you know about the bugs, person who lives here? So she includes their expertise in her notes. She always makes a note that, like, I haven't directly observed this, but I trust that this guy notices what he's talking about. But she would use the native names of plants whenever she could because she was taught them by the locals.
That's great.
She really had a high respect for the people who lived with these animals full time and weren't just visiting from the Netherlands. And she also was quick to condemn any harsh treatment that the locals suffered at the hands of the Dutch merchants. They reportedly liked her so much that they would bring her specimens and animals that she would not have been able to attain herself.
Oh, that's awesome.
Like, she's never going to encounter this. I'll just take it to her. I'll just take it.
That really speaks to her character.
I think so.
And what a respectful person she seems to have been. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really awesome.
The one thing that seems to come back again and again with her is she does struggle a little bit with the humidity with her drawings.
Me too, girl.
And that the leafcutter ants keep eating her drawings. Taking it away.
As they do.
As they do. And at one point, she has to stop working for a bit because she touched a caterpillar that was white and fuzzy.
Oh, yep.
And she was like, this caterpillar, she uses the word poisonous, but we would have said venomous. It is straight up poisonous. Do not touch it. As I found out, to my detriment. Do not.
She probably got a pretty wicked rash.
Yeah. She describes it in her notes as like instantly inflamed. Like just instantly swelled up.
And this is why we don't just touch things if we don't know what they are.
Do not touch it.
Yeah.
Someone has to touch it first. Oh, Derek wants to note that not every language differentiates between venomous and poisonous. So,
well, that doesn't matter because this is science.
Yeah,
and science does differentiate between venomous and poisonous. And this is a science podcast.
Yes.
So
in late 17th century, maybe they did it. So she also, I want to note that she was also documenting like the plants and other larger animals. Specifically, the medicinal use of plants was of interest to her, especially when she touched caterpillars that needed to like rub some sap on it. She would document, among others, the sap from a palm, which was rubbed on itchy scalps to treat worm infections. Sorry, drum. Marianne also took interest in agriculture, and among the local fruits, she showcased the pineapple. So the pineapple had already been documented, but for some reason, her drawing of a pineapple became like the meme of the time. People loved this pineapple drawing.
Really?
Like it became like the thing was this pineapple. So while the pineapple had been drawn for Marianne's became the most prominent image of the pineapple. And to this day,
that for her.
Still find prints of it anywhere.
That's great.
Unfortunately, she only lasted in Suriname for 2 years before she had to go home because they think it was malaria, but it's like unclear. She gets sick. They say you got to go home because you can't recover here. So she's forced to return to the Dutch Republic.
I'm surprised she made it 2 years before getting malaria or some other kind of
because she's like out there in the dirt digging up bugs. You're breathing and all kinds. And it's possible that was just like the one that got her sick enough that she was like, okay, I guess I'll go home.
Yeah.
But even on the boat ride home, Kelly, you know that she had to hatch a moth on the way home and document it. So the final bug she threw was the monkey slug moth on the boat home to the Netherlands. She gets home to the
monkey
Netherlands.
slug moth.
The
That's
monkey
awesome.
slug.
That's
another one you shouldn't touch. Do not touch that one. So she gets home to the Netherlands. She's recuperating. And she says, all right, I'm going to make another book, a portfolio book. And this is the book that she's known for. This is the one. It's called Metamorphosis Insectorum Surinaceum, which sounds
like she's casting a spell.
Whoa! Metamorphosis Insectorum Surinaceum! And you're like, I'm a bug.
Now you're a bug.
So she published her book 1705. It was an incredibly ambitious undertaking. The book was printed at size, portfolio size.
Oh, wow. Wow, like a big elephant folio?
Yes, big. It is done this way, not only to show the detail of these creatures, but to keep the creatures life-sized when you looked at them on the page. That was very
awesome
to her.
Yeah.
Because she knew that so many people would never encounter these creatures, and she wanted them to appreciate how beautiful they were. Opposite the image was text explaining her research. So it's a whole page of bugs, and then or toucans or lizard or whatever it is. And then it's a whole page of all of her observations about this animal. The observations included things like the colors and the patterns so that you knew exactly what this bug looked like, because she printed it in two different forms. There was the regular form, which was in black and white, so that, anyone could come and get it. But then there was the fancy form. There was the elite form, which she hand colored. Her and her two daughters would hand color the prints to the exact specifications.
Wow.
So that it looked, I think that's where I need to start forwarding them to you so you can see how beautiful they are.
I just checked Amazon, and you can purchase, it looks like a reprint of this book, which I believe I'm going to have to order now.
Yeah, I'm afraid I might have to order some of them too. So I'll send you the spider one first, because I know you love a spider.
Oh yeah, love them as spideys. Oh wow. Wow, look at the detail on that.
And keep in mind, this is going to be at size. They are going to be life-sized.
Yeah, I see a huntsman and it looks like a bunch of ants and two tarantulas.
I love the ants making the bridge.
Look at the tarantula on a hummingbird.
Mm-hmm,
yeah. Wow.
So there is a bird hunting spider that's named after her. Although this particular spider isn't a bird hunting spider, but it's fine. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
The Goliath bird eater.
I don't know.
I think that's the biggest one, but yeah.
Yeah. I have a list of the bugs named after her here at the end. So how she was able to do it was she had basically a Patreon club where you would get access to the prints as they were finished before they collected into one big book. If you subscribed to her channel, basically. So you could pay 15 florins a month to get early access, or you could pay the 45 florins for the colored book at the end, which is that's a pretty big jump.
What I would want. Yeah.
Right. Which is what everyone wanted, right? Everyone wanted these hand colored. She published it in it's just a huge success. It's hugely successful. It was very important to Marianne that the book be regarded as an important scientific diary, but also intentionally wanted it to be a work of art too. The size of the book meant that it was not portable. You could not take it with you on your commute to work sort of book. Okay. Yeah. You had to sit with it and study it.
This is a coffee table book.
This is here to be an artifact in your home, right? Particularly at the table of a library or in the collection of one of the cabinets of curiosities is where she wanted this book to live. The importance of the life size of the animals is evidence that she wanted the average reader, who would never use this book in the field, to get as close to experiencing the wonder of these things as possible from home.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
And people loved it. And it got reprinted in Latin, in French. It never got printed in English in her lifetime, which is so strange. Marianne contemplated publishing the book in English so that she could present it to the Queen of England. She mused, "It is reasonable for a woman to make such a gift to a person of the same sex," which I love.
The audacity.
Victoria will get this, or not Victoria. The Queen of England will get this because she's a girl and girls love bugs. So I'm going to
now I wish she had the opportunity.
I know, right?
Can you imagine? How cool.
So, oh yeah, here's another example of the whole life cycle of this plant as well. It
Oh
goes,
yeah.
it's got the flowering and the fruit, and here's a little guy, he's eating it.
Yeah, little
Oh,
caterpillar down there. Some kind of beetle, looks
yeah,
like. Very
a
cool.
lot of flies. So it was thankfully received with great acclaim to the point where she was able to like make multiple versions of it, add extra plates to it in
Wow.
by 1710. So just 5 years later, she's being described as that great naturalist and artist, and was featured in scientific journals across Europe, educational plans, like they universities are teaching using her
Oh, that's
images.
cool. That's so
Like
cool.
bam. And in the end, Merian has documented evidence and described the life cycles of 186 insects
Wow.
that
That's
no one else has
amazing.
described at this point,
Yeah,
right?
that no one else is. Yeah, what we need to remember is that this is all brand new,
Brand new.
brand new
There was
discoveries.
there was no
Other,
standardized scientific terminology for any of these
yeah.
bugs. Well, so it's not till like 1735 through the 50s that you start to get like that nomenclature thing where
Binomial nomenclature. Yeah.
yeah, by no, there you go. You knew. So she even used everyday words for the animals. She would be like, "It's a silkworm. It's a wasp." She also referred to butterflies as summer birds because
It's
that was
very
like
cute.
it's a common term for them at the time because butterflies are out in the summer and they fly, so they must be a summer bird. So when nomenclature came out, Linnaeus, I assume you're familiar
Mhm.
with,
We go
he
way back.
yeah, you guys are just like this, yeah. He used Merian's drawings when describing the animals and giving them their names. He used 56 animals
Wow.
and 39 plants from Suriname, including the tarantula. In reference to her research, Linnaeus abbreviated her name to M. Surin for animals and from Suriname, and M. Ur for European insects. She's cited over 130 times in
Oh,
Linnaeus's
that's awesome.
work.
That's so awesome.
So but I wonder though, I wonder if it had been out yet, the nomenclature, how many of these bugs she would have been able to name herself. And like I'm a little bit annoyed that
Yeah, that she didn't
she,
get to name
she didn't get to
anything.
name any of them. So she is quoted as saying, "I created the first classification for all insects which had chrysalises, the daytime butterflies and the nighttime moths. The second classification is that of the maggots, the worms, the flies, and the bees. I retained the indigenous names of the plants because they are still in use in America by both the locals and the Indians." We would use the term probably Native Americans. So in her later years in Amsterdam, she continued to work until the very end. Her younger daughter actually went back to Suriname and married a guy there. And so she
Oh,
would send specimens back to her
back to
mom.
mom. That's great.
Despite suffering what may have been a stroke in 1715, Marianne
Hmm.
extended her studies into flies and rewrote the preface of her book to eradicate any mention of spontaneous generation. She was like, get that out of here. Some 50 plates and descriptions of European insects that appeared to have been intended for a third volume were published after her death in 1717.
Wow.
Um,
She was
'Cause
prolific.
she was going.
Yeah.
So
What a
there's some
oh,
additional 12 plates added to the official canon of Metamorphosis. All but two of them are Marianne's direct work. There are two that are done by her daughters, replicating her style.
that's awesome. That's so awesome.
So Marianne was described as a lively, hardworking, and courteous by a visiting scholar in 1711. Her house was full of drawings, insects, plants, fruits, and on the walls were her Suriname watercolors. Shortly before Marianne's death, her work was seen in Amsterdam by Peter the Great, and upon her death, he acquired a significant number of her
Oh,
paintings,
wow.
which to this day are kept in the academic collections in St. Petersburg. There are 67 known surviving first editions of the Metamorphosis Insectorium Zeranaceum. And
That's
of course,
amazing.
like she just changed the game entirely. We could always say that Maria Sibylla Merian changed the field of scientific illustration completely. I dare say more or less reinventing something that was already completely new. She was like, no, this isn't it, guys. We're starting over. Her influence cannot be overstated. Her work was found in every library and collection of notes across scientific communities of Europe for centuries after her death, even famously by King George III, who had a deep interest in botany himself. And like it's made the news several times when these have like resold because they sell for so much.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
In the
glad we
end,
got to know her.
yeah, in the end, I think there's like two butterflies and a moth and a frog, the bird-eating spider, uh, Avicularia marianae is named in her honor.
That's awesome.
There's another spider. So there's like probably close to a dozen animals that are named after her. There's an entire genus of mantises that's named after her.
Wow. Your own genus is pretty
Yeah, the Sibylla.
amazing.
So anytime you run across a Sibylla mantis, know that Maria's
It's
there
her.
winking at you. So yeah, there's a lot of bugs named after her. And I think only more will be. The most recent bug was named after her in 2018. So
Wow. Oh, yeah. So we still remember her, and she was truly a pioneer for women in that field. That's wild. Absolutely wild.
yeah, she was great. And other than that one part where she's like, I think I'm going to go join a religious commune. I was like, girl boss, let's go. And even then,
but then she convinced them to send her to Suriname. So
that's true. So like in the end, it was worth it, I think.
It all worked.
And she I didn't include the picture because it grosses me out so much, but she was the first one to document that frog that like has frogs that hatch out of its back.
Oh, yeah, very weird.
So much.
Very, very weird.
I don't hate a lot of animals, but that frog's on my list.
Well, how many paintbrushes out of 6
portfolios?
paintbrushes?
How many there's like a caterpillar named after her that's called like Marianne's paintbrush or something like that.
I love it.
Yeah, I'll give her every single one. Every portfolio I own, she can have
it. She's awesome.
What
a badass.
Cool. And
so
like
cool.
She never remarried or anything, you know. She was like, this
She's
didn't work
busy.
out. I got bugs now. Bugs are my husband, you know.
Yeah, she had all those little leggy boys as her
those leggy boys. So there you go. Now you know.
What a great episode, Amanda. Thank you.
Bugs do not come from mud. They come from eggs. Which seems so obvious now, but someone had to write it down first.
Gotta write it down. Yeah.
There you go.
I love an Amanda episode. This might be my favorite Amanda episode.
Well, let's hope we keep them rolling. It's gonna be a long one because I don't know how much you're gonna be able to snip out me talking about it. I just felt like I had to include everything. I had like you can't get to know later her unless you know.
Oh no, this is great.
Building for this.
Yeah, you got to know the whole life story.
Yeah,
fantastic. What an incredible. I would call her a career ancestor for me.
Yeah,
women like her. Yeah, women like her started, and then here I am now, and I'm super grateful for her and all the other lady ecologists who came before me. But very cool. Yeah, Marie. Woo!
Yeah. Marianne's out here killing the game. So there you go. If you see her pop up on your like people we should know, now you'll say, I already know. I already knew. So if you love Marianne, feel free to come to the Reddit and tell us about how much you love her. And
tell your friends about her.
Tell your friends.
She's
cool. And you can buy the like first edition prints of it for like a couple $1,000 from the British Museum.
Wow.
I was like doing research about it. I was like, oh, do I have $4,000 to buy this? Buy this Marianne print right now? Maybe
what do I want when I graduate?
Perfect. The perfect graduation gift. You can buy like cheap versions of it pretty much anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, you can get like the portfolio grade ones that they keep in libraries for like a couple $100, and it's not a big deal. So there you go. Now you know. Tell us, would you collect a Marianne print in Reddit, on YouTube, on
Instagram, on Blue Sky,
we're
Facebook.
Everywhere.
Yeah, we're all over the place. Come say hi or email us.
Oh yeah,
if you want us to cover another entomologist or ecologist in general, email us. Let us know. We would love to.
Yeah, someday we'll have to do that pain scale, you and I.
That'll be for the Patreon.
That's paid only content, baby. Okay. All right. Well, sure as Suriname. Love you. Bye. Bugs Need Heroes is created by Derek Conrad and Kelly Zimmerman. Hosted by Amanda Niday and Kelly Zimmerman. Bugs Need Heroes is produced and edited by Derek Conrad. Our music is Ladybug Castle by Roll Music. All character art by Amanda Niday. Got a bug question? Email us at bugsneedheroes@gmail.com. Check us out on bugsneedheroes.com for the visual companion to our episodes with the artwork of the bug-related heroes. We also have an Instagram, Twitter, and subreddit under the Bugs Need Heroes name. Thanks for coming by. We're almost done, Derek. Derek keeps giving us the excuse me, it's been a long time. So